Hello, my name is Stuart. I'm the unrepentant atheist, and I want to talk today about the witnesses um, who are purported to have first discovered the empty tomb, namely the women who went to the tomb to anoint the body. And I only just did a video yesterday, effectively debunking the Gospels or the New Testament as a historical source. As I said yesterday, I don't believe they're historical. And the reason I'm making this video is because somebody left a comment that it's been argued by various apologists that the evangelists, in trying to write a persuasive story or narrative about the resurrection of Jesus, would not have included women as the witnesses, namely because women's testimony in court was not admissible. I don't know how accurate this is, but let's supposing it's true. Um, so just because women's testimony in court is not admissible, it means that um, if if they appear in a narrative as witnesses to something, it's going to undermine the veracity or the reliability of the story. I can see that point, but I think first of all, what we should start off by saying is that at the very best, at the very best, even if we go along with that argument that this particular detail is true because they would not have included it for that reason, that it would undermine the reliability of the story, so it must be true. Let's go along with that line of reasoning. What does it prove? Well, let's just have a look at the accounts. I've got them here. I'll go through them very quickly so we can just see what is actually being claimed. So Matthew chapter 28, after the Sabbath at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. So when I read this for the first time, my immediate reaction was, well, we know who Mary Magdalene was. She was one of Jesus' followers. She followed him all over Galilee, and a lot of scholars have argued that she was actually quite a prominent citizen. She was actually quite wealthy. The other Mary, we've got these three Marys. Now that's significant because what was the mother of Jesus called? Her name was Mary too. So there's a lot of significance being put on Mary as a figure who was close to Jesus. Mary the mother, we've got Mary Magdalene who knew Jesus, and we've got these other figures. So they're not just like random women that have appeared at the tomb and are running with their hands in the air screaming that they've seen Jesus. I think that it's something, the way that it's written here and the characters who've been chosen to relay this information and be witnesses have actually got some kind of credibility about them. So I don't go along with the view that they're just women who couldn't possibly have given any kind of credible evidence because nobody really believed what women said in those days anyway. No, I don't go along with that. I could certainly see that the evangelists decided that there would be a lot of symbolic power in having the three Marys appear at the tomb, in view of the fact that Mary is the mother of Jesus, and that this would actually lend more credibility and symbolic power to the story than if some of the male disciples had simply gone along and been witnesses themselves. So let's have a look at the other account. Yeah, so what happens is in this Matthew account, they see an angel the angel tells them that Jesus has risen, and then they see Jesus, and he instructs them to go and tell his followers. So let's have a look at Mark 16. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome brought spices. So there are just two Marys there, but the same Marys effectively. Let's have a look at Luke. So we've got, on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. So we've got, it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and others with them who told this to the apostles. Also, in this particular account, while they were wondering about this, suddenly two men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, he has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee." And then it says in verse 8, then they remembered his words. So this is the narrator explaining how something important had happened and how the women actually remembered what was said. And they went to the apostles. They'd remembered the words. They told the apostles. They no doubt had the words either recorded or remembered or written down or went into oral tradition. And this is how eventually, 30, 40 years later, the evangelist is writing up an accurate story. And it all comes from that verse 8. Then they remembered his words. This whole thing about the oral tradition, remembering and passing on testimony was very important. And then we've got John, the empty tomb, chapter 20. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So there we have Mary Magdalene again. So again, it's not like they're just random women. This is Mary Magdalene is probably the single most. If we set aside Mary, the mother of Jesus, she's probably the single most important female figure in the New Testament. And as has been pointed out by many scholars, women were actually quite prominent in the life of Jesus. More so, we could probably say, than other prophets and from the Old Testament. So I think there's some kind of, it's not that the narrators were trying to avoid mentioning women in the story as witnesses, but had to because, it's come down to them through the oral tradition or through the Q source, which they're all quoting from, and that they've got no option but to use women because all the earlier sources confirm this, and it's true. They might well have invented it, and there's no contradiction for me because they're using, in my opinion, well, I shouldn't really say in my opinion, because I've just argued that they're using key figures with the name Mary, Mary the mother of James, Mary Magdalene, and it's no coincidence that these Marys have got the same name as the mother of Jesus. So I don't accept the apologist view that if it wasn't true that women had been at the tomb, that the evangelists wouldn't have used it because it would undermine the story. Having said that, I accept that it's kind of fairly, I don't have any trouble believing that Jesus was a figure, a real historical figure. I don't have any trouble believing that he was crucified. I don't have any trouble believing that he died. I don't have any trouble believing that his body was put in a cloth in line with Jewish tradition. First washed, put in a cloth, and then taken to the tomb, and that the women arrived to anoint it, with spices. Uh, I don't have any problem with that at all. What I've got problem with is the idea that Jesus really died and that he really truly rose from the dead and became alive. That's what I've got problems with. So even if we go along with the apologists' view about what I've already just explained, that women had no credibility in a court of law, and an evangelist wouldn't have used them unless he was narrating real events which had really happened. I can accept all that, but I can't accept the resurrection, because, as I've already said, women may well have gone to the tomb, but it doesn't mean that they came away and told everybody that they'd seen the risen Jesus. That part of it is the invented part. That Jesus rose, that's the invented part. And there's no apologist argument that can establish that Jesus was truly resurrected. Absolutely none. And this thing about the women doesn't make it any more or less likely. And the other thing is about anointing the body. I've done a bit of research. There's one scholar, Parsons, who argues that in Jewish tradition, women typically would anoint the body, not men. So it's no surprise that women were the first on the scene. There's another scholar who disagrees with that, and he found a text which establishes that the rule was that men were not to anoint the bodies of women. Men could only anoint the bodies of men, but women could anoint the bodies of women, and they could also anoint the bodies of men. So from that, it kind of looks to me like, okay, there's no reason why some of the apostles or some of the followers of Jesus, the men, could not have bought the spices themselves and gone to the tomb, and they could have made all the discoveries, and they could have been the witnesses. And then we would now be saying, well, of course they used men because obviously their word was more reliable than women's. But it's clear from this thing that men couldn't anoint the bodies of women, but women could do both sexes, that it was more a woman's, I'm reluctant to say this, but it was more a woman's job than a man's job to do that. And so I've got no problems at all, frankly, believing that women were there on the scene. I've got no problems believing that at all. But what I don't accept, and I had a lot of trouble researching this, I had a lot of trouble, because when you go to Google and you try to research this, you will come back with virtually nothing but Christian apologetics. I struggled to find much material on this topic. There was a Bart Ehrman video where he doesn't really address it. He does address it in a paper which he wrote about this whole thing about women as witnesses, and there's a page by William Lane Craig where he's discrediting everything that Bart Ehrman says, or at least he thinks he's discrediting. But there's no need. There's no need at all for atheists or for skeptics to worry about this so-called evidence. Richard Dawkins said he finds it quite impressive that women were the first on the scene. It's something that for him lends more credibility to the Gospels. But I disagree with him. It doesn't really mean anything, because none of it can be confirmed. And even if you want to argue that women were that go along with that line, as I've already said, it doesn't lend any more credence to the supernatural aspects, the fantastic claims of the actual resurrection, Jesus being risen from the dead. The empty tomb, I can quite believe that maybe Jesus had some admirers or followers who stole the body. They knew where it was. They had time to do it. Or maybe the Romans went and took it and just simply got rid of the body. Pontius Pilate may well have said to them, "Look, we can't have the body lying in that tomb because he's revered by certain followers as the King of the Jews, or as the Son of God, and that's a challenge to Rome." They may well take his body, and who knows what they might do with it. They might, they might try and make some kind of big ceremony about it. So take the body and destroy it. That's possible. That is possible. I'm not saying it did happen, but there are other explanations why the body might have gone missing from the tomb. And that's if we accept that, of course, any of that at all actually happened. As I said, I've got no trouble believing the basic elements of the story. And I think many atheists, probably like me, agree that there was a Jesus, that he was probably crucified under Pontius Pilate, but he just simply died and he stayed dead, and that the rest of it is essentially fabricated to embellish and to support a movement to build a religion. So, what do you think? Are you persuaded by the apologists on this thing? It is staggering that when you try and research this thing, the whole of Google is spammed with nothing but virtually nothing but Christian apologetics, holding this up as the evidence which proves the resurrection. How Christians can make the statement that the evidence for the resurrection is overwhelming is something which just completely baffles me. And all I can say, as I've said time and time again, go to the universities, go to Harvard, go to Yale, go to Oxford, go to Cambridge, go into the history departments, ask to do a module on New Testament studies. There isn't any. There's nothing in any of the proper historical books that even really mentions Jesus, let alone the resurrection. Is not regarded as a historical event. It's only regarded as historical by Christians. So that's all I've got to say. Let me know your thoughts. Sorry, this video, I try to get my videos down to about 10-12 minutes. I fail virtually every time, and look forward to seeing you again soon with another video. I'm probably going to have a break of a few days and come back and do some more Bible reading. Okay, bye-bye.